Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week. And if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. Today I'll be teaching you how to make a modern off-the-shoulder sweater. For this affair, we're rocking a wide boat neck that can be worn on or off the shoulders, clean ribbing, and some comfy 3/4 length sleeves. Speaking of, if you're into 3/4, long, short, or no sleeves, we've got you covered. Or not. You see, we've got hundreds of modern crochet designs with plenty more coming, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now it's time to get on with the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 275 grams of yarn. That's 600 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5 and 5.5 millimeter hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us a recent DIY project. For us, we have recently put together some shelves and they're looking pretty cute. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 3 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, and extended half double crochet. This tutorial is for size small, but you can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Next, we're going to grab our 5 millimeter hook, and we're all going to start by making an odd number chain that reaches from the top of our underarm, across our chest, over to the top of our other underarm. Now for me, I've already measured mine out. I need a total of 11 inches or 28 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 45. So now that I have my chain, I'm going to take my stitch marker and insert it into that last chain. And then once we have that, we are then going to make an even number chain that reaches from the top of our underarm around our shoulder to the top of our underarm along our back. Now I've already measured mine out. I need a total of 6.5 inches or 19 centimeters. So I'm now going to make a chain of 26. Alright, so I am back and this is what we should all have so far. Now this is just going to be our prep chain, so we actually don't need to do the rest of this chain. We just need to remember the amount of chains that we made that worked across our chest, because that's going to be the same chain that we have for our back. And then the same chain that we have for our shoulder is going to be the same for the other side. We want everything to be nice and even. So go ahead and write down your numbers if you guys need to. But now that we have this all figured out, we can put this away and then we can get started on our collar. Now getting started on our collar, we're going to take our same category 4 yarn that we just did our prep chain with and insert that back onto our 5 millimeter hook right after a slip knot. And from here we're going to make a chain the height that we would like for our collar to be. Now I'd like mine to be just about an inch or 2 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 4. And now that I have my chain, I'm going to block off my last chain and do a chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, I'm going to insert my hook into there with a slip stitch. So insert, yarn over, and pull through everything on our hook. Now there's our first slip stitch. Let's do another one. Into that following chain, insert. When we have 2 loops, yarn over, pull through everything, and that's it. Continue to put 1 slip stitch into every chain, but a really quick tip that I have is when we are doing our slip stitches, make sure that we're not tugging too tightly on every stitch, otherwise the following row is going to be a little too tight to work into. But now that we've put 1 slip stitch into every chain, we're now going to work on our following slip stitch row, which are now going to be back loop slip stitches. So to work our way up to the following row, chain 1 and flip our work. We're all going to start by finding the last stitch from our previous row, and then we're going to insert in through that back loop, and when we have those 2 loops, we're going to yarn over, pull through everything on our hook. There's our first back loop slip stitch. Let's do another one. Into that following stitch's back loop, yarn over, pull through everything, and then once more into that next stitch's back loop, insert, yarn over, and pull through everything. And continue to put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. And then from here, we're just going to continue to do our back loop slip stitch rows for the same amount of chains that we made working across our chest. So if you guys have my numbers, I had a total of 45 chains. So right now I'm going to do a total of 45 back loop slip stitch rows, and then I will meet you guys back. Alright, so I am back with my 45 back loop slip stitch rows. And now from here we're going to get started on our shoulder, but I just wanted to meet you guys back so that we can insert our stitch marker into the edge of this row. So all we're going to do is take our stitch marker, I'm going to use the blue one for my front and back panel, and insert just into the edge of the row, just so I know that this is where my front panel is going to be. And then from here, I'm going to do my following side slip stitch row, which is going to be the first row for our shoulder. So just like before, just chain one, flip our work, and then one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. But now I'm going to grab another stitch marker that is another color and insert it into the edge of this row so that I know where the shoulder begins. And all I'm going to do from here is continue on with my back loop slip stitch rows, now for the same amount of rows that we had for our shoulder. Now if you guys have my numbers, I had a total of 26 chains for my shoulder. So starting from this first side slip stitch row right here, I'm going to make a total of 26 back loop slip stitch rows and insert my shoulder stitch marker into that last stitch. And then I'm going to repeat for the back, making sure that I'm alternating the colors the way I need to. And once when I have the entirety of my collar all finished up, I will meet you guys back just to show you what the entire thing's supposed to look like. Alright, so I'm back and the entirety of my collar is all finished up, and I'm just going to remind you guys that we did insert our stitch markers into the correct spots, and then we can move on to seaming it all together. So the beginning of our band should have started with the same amount of chains that we made working across our chest. So if you guys have my numbers, I had a total of 45 back loop slip stitch rows. The section right after that was our shoulder portion, so for me that was a total of 26 rows just for the shoulder, and then from there it's going to repeat for the back and the other shoulder. So right after our first shoulder, the section right after that should have been our back, and so for me that would have been another 45 back loop slip stitch rows, and then we should have ended with our second shoulder, which for me was going to be 26 back loop slip stitch rows. So in total I have a total of 142 rows, and now what we're going to do is just sandwich the two ends together, so just make sure that our work isn't twisted. And then we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. So now that our hook is in through both corners, we're going to yarn over, pull through everything, and we're going to be preparing for an outside loop slip stitch seam just so it can look like another slip stitch row. So we're all going to start by finding that first available stitch into the front panel, and then we're going to insert our hook only in through that front loop. Next, we're going to find that next available stitch into the back loop, and then insert only in through that back loop, or the loop that's furthest away from us, and then we're going to yarn over, pull through everything on our hook. And that's it. Let's do another one. Find that next stitch into the front panel, insert only in through that front loop. Next stitch into the back panel and insert only in through that back loop. And from there, just yarn over and pull through everything. And just to do my last stitch with you guys, insert your hook into that next stitch's front loop, into the next stitch's back loop, into the back panel, yarn over, pull through everything. And from here, we're going to chain one and switch out to our 5.5mm hook. So the next thing we're going to do is single crochet all along the bottom of our piece. So making sure that we're using our 5.5mm hook now, we're going to be putting one single crochet into every side row. So just to do the first one, this is my first available side row right here, which is this raised row, and my stitch marker should be into there as well, so I'm just going to take it out for now. And then find that top loop within that following raised row, and I'm going to insert my hook into there, and then single crochet. And we do want to make sure that we're inserting our stitch markers into those top stitches just so we don't have to go back later on within the tutorial and then insert them back in. So that's my first one. Let's do the following one. This is my next side row, which is this divot right here. Insert your hook into that top loop and then do another single crochet. That's pretty much it. Let's just do one more set together. Find that next raised row, insert your hook into that top loop with one single crochet. Find your next side row, which is this divot, insert your hook into that top loop with another single crochet. And then that's it. All we're going to do is put one single crochet into every side row, and we just want to double check and make sure once we reach those side rows with our stitch markers in them, we want to make sure that we're inserting our stitch markers into those top stitches making sure that we're still keeping everything color coordinated because that's going to be easier for everyone. So go ahead and just make your way all the way around. Once we don't have any more side rows left to work into, slip stitch into that chain space, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I will meet you guys back. Alright, so I'm back and the entirety of my collar is all finished up. I did a chain up of 1 and cut once when I reached that chain 1 space, and now we're going to get started on the underarm portion for the front panel so we can actually put this away for now. And from here, we're all going to take our 5.5mm hook, and we're all going to make a chain from about 1 inch underneath our underarm down to where we want the bottom of this top to be. So this can be cropped or long, completely up to you. And I want mine to be cropped, so I'm going to measure from 1 inch underneath my underarm down to my waist. So I'm going to start by making a chain of 7 inches or 18 centimeters. That's going to be a chain of 27. Alright, so now that we have our chain, we're going to get started on our first row, which is going to be an extended half double crochet row. So we're all going to start by blocking off that last chain and then do a chain 3. Now that chain 3 doesn't count as a stitch, we just need the height, and what we're going to do from here is yarn over, preparing for our extended half double crochet, and then into that chain that we blocked off, or the 4th chain from our hook, we're going to insert, yarn over, and pull through. We should have 3 loops on our hook, so all we're going to do from here is yarn over, pull through just that first loop, should have 3 loops on our hook now, so now we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops. And that is our extended half double crochet or modified double crochet. Let's do the next one. Yarn over, insert your hook into that following chain, pull through. We're going to yarn over, pull through just the first loop, yarn over, pull through the last 3 loops on our hook. And from here, we're just going to put 1 extended half double crochet into every chain, leaving the last one so that we can increase together. Alright, so now that we've made our way all the way down with our extended half double crochet, we should have left 1 chain, so now we're going to increase. All that's going to be is putting 2 extended half double crochets into that last chain. So I'm just going to insert into that last chain with 1 extended half double crochet, and then 1 more into that same last chain. Just like that. And that is our increase, and what we're going to do from here is get started on our next row, so chain 3. That still doesn't count as a stitch, just our turning chain. Flip our work, and now they're going to be within the back loops because we want a really clean ribbing for this piece. So we're all going to start by finding the last stitch from our previous row and insert our hook into there with 2 back loop extended half double crochets. So we're starting with an increase again. So yarn over, insert your hook into that last stitch from our previous row's back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through the first loop, yarn over, pull through 3, and we're going to be doing 1 more into that same back loop. So yarn over, insert into that same back loop, pull through the first loop, pull through all 3. And now that we have our increase, we're just going to put 1 back loop extended half double crochet into every stitch. And now that we're at the end of our row 2, we're just going to get started on the following row with each other, which is going to be another back loop extended half double crochet row that ends with an increase. So from here, we're going to chain 3, still not a stitch, just our turning chain, flip our work, and then make our way all the way up, putting 1 back loop extended half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one. So we've just made our way all the way down to the end of our row 3, leaving that last stitch, and now we're going to do just 1 more increase together. So yarn over, into that last stitch's back loop with our first back loop extended half double, and then just 1 more into that same back loop. And that's it. From here, we're just going to continue to repeat these 2 rows that we have until this portion can reach from mid-underarm over to the front of our body, around where our front panel stitch marker is. So I'll meet you guys back right after we finish an odd number row or an increase just like this. Alright, so I'm back and the underarm portion is all finished up. I have a total of 5 rows and my width is just about 2.5 inches or 6 centimeters. And now what we're going to do from here is make an even number chain that reaches all the way up to the collar that we made before. So if you guys need to, go ahead and try that on, and then we're going to make a chain that length. I just want to give you guys a heads up that the longer you make the chain, the wider our sleeve is going to be. So I only need about 1.5 inches or 4 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain of 8. And now that we have our chain, we can reintroduce our collar. So what we're going to do is slip stitch it into that stitch marker stitch that we have for our front panel. Now, if you guys remember, my front panel and my back panel are blocked off by my blue stitch markers. So I'm going to insert my hook into that stitch, yarn over, pull through everything, and now my body portion is nice and attached. Now from here, we're going to slip stitch into the base, making sure that we're working towards our other front panel stitch marker or my blue stitch marker, and then we're going to do our following row. So what we're going to do is slip stitch up those next two available stitches. So here's my first. I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over, pull through everything. There's my first slip stitch, and then we need another one because our extended half double crochets are kind of tall. So insert your hook into that following stitch into the base, pull through everything, and flip our work. And what we're going to do from here is put one extended half double crochet into every chain, and then once we reach the body, put one back loop extended half double crochet into every stitch. So just to do the first one, we're going to yarn over, find that first chain, insert our hook, pull through one, pull through three, so a regular extended half double crochet, and we're going to continue to put one into every chain. Once we reach the body, put one back loop extended half double crochet into every stitch, and when we reach the end of the row, chain three, flip our work, and put one back loop extended half double crochet into every stitch again. I'll meet you guys back at the base just so we can connect it just once more. Alright, so I've just made my way down with my back loop extended half double crochet and then all the way back up with my second back loop extended half double crochet. I don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now I'm going to work into the base. So all that's going to be is counting up the next two available stitches because our extended half doubles are kind of tall. Into that second stitch that we count, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. So here's one, here's two. Insert your hook into there, yarn over and pull through everything. And that's how we're always going to connect our row whenever we're working into the base. And when we're at the base, when we work our way up to the following row, we're going to slip stitch up the next two stitches. So there's one, and then into that following stitch, there's our second, and then we're going to flip our work. And then from here, just put one back loop extended half double crochet into every stitch. And that's it. We're just going to continue to put one back loop extended half double crochet into every stitch, making our way all the way back up as well, making sure that we're connecting it into the base the same way that we just did. And we're just going to continue to repeat these two rows with no increases and no decreases until this reaches our other front panel stitch marker stitch. And once we do, I'll meet you guys back so that we can get started on the underarm portion. Alright, so I am back and I have just made my way all the way across with my back loop extended half double crochet rows until I reached my other stitch marker stitch. Now from here, we're going to do our underarm, but this is going to be a little bit different for everyone. If you guys are like me and ended along the base, once we slip stitched into that last stitch for our front panel, I did do a chain up of one and cut. For those of you that are along the bottom, you don't have to do a chain up of one and cut. You guys can just go straight into the underarm portion from here. But what we all have to do, no matter where we ended, top or bottom, we're all going to need to start to insert our stitch marker into the same amount of chains that we made when we worked our way up to our collar. So if you guys have my numbers, I have inserted my stitch marker into the 8th stitch from the top because I made a chain of 8 along the side. Now for those of you that have ended along the bottom, you're going to chain 3, flip your work, and then put one back loop extended half double crochet into every stitch until you have 2 stitches right before your stitch marker. And for those of us that have ended along the base, what we are going to do, because we also need to keep up with the ribbing, is insert our hook into the stitch that's right next to our stitch marker stitch that's working down towards the bottom. And then we're all going to do our decrease. So into that stitch that I have that's right next to my stitch marker stitch, making sure that we're working down towards the bottom, I'm going to insert my hook in through that back loop. I'm going to insert my yarn onto my hook, pull through, and we're going to start with a chain 3, and that's not going to count as a stitch, we just need the height. And what we're going to do from here is our decrease of 2 because on the other side we did an increase of 2. So all we're going to do is yarn over and insert our hook into the stitch that our chain 3 is in. We're going to yarn over and pull through. Now into that following stitches back loop, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, and from here we're going to yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops, leaving us a total of 3 loops left, and just yarn over, pull through all 3. Now from here, all I'm going to do is put one back loop extended half double crochet into every stitch. Once I reach the end of the row, chain 3, flip my work, and then I'm going to put one back loop extended half double crochet into every stitch again, leaving the last 2 stitches so that we can do a decrease together. Now, if you guys worked your way all the way up and just did your decrease, you're now at your stitch marker. What you guys are going to do is chain 3, flip your work, and then hang tight for the next clip. We'll do one more decrease together. Alright, so I've just made my way all the way back up with my back loop extended half double crochet row. I left the last 2 stitches just so we can decrease together once more. Now to do our decrease, we're going to yarn over, insert our hook into that following stitch's back loop, pull through, and then into that following stitch's back loop, and pull through. Now once we have those 4 loops on our hook, we're going to yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through 3, and that is how we do our decrease. Now since I am right here, I'm about to get started on my 3rd underarm row, so I'm just going to get that one started off with you guys. If you guys started on the opposite end, you'll be along the bottom. All you guys are going to do is chain 3, flip your work, and then put one back loop extended half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 2. So just to do one more decrease together, we're going to yarn over and insert your hook into that following stitch's back loop, pull through, into that next stitch's back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops to get a total of 3, then yarn over and pull through those 3 loops, and then that's it. Just continue to repeat these 2 rows until we have the same amount of underarm rows as our other side. Once we do, go ahead and do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I will meet you back just so I can talk you guys through how we're going to do the back panel, even though it's going to be done pretty much the same way. Alright, so I am back and I have just finished up my front panel, and I did do a chain up of 1 and cut. Now that we have this, we're going to repeat the same thing that we just did here for the back, so I just wanted to remind you guys how it's going to get done. We're all going to start by making the same amount of chains when we started our underarm, do the same amount of increase rows, and then from there we're going to make the same chain that reached all the way up to our collar. Now from there, all we're going to do is slip stitch it into the back panel's stitch marker stitch, and then just work our way all the way across with our back loop extended half double crochets with no increases and no decreases. And then from there, repeat the same underarm that we just did together for the front panel. Once we have that, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I will meet you guys back. Alright, so I am back with my front and with my back panel, and now what we're going to do is seam everything together. So I'm going to start by making sure that my work is flipped wrong side out, meaning the seam that we have for the collar is along the inside. And then I'm going to be inserting my hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. So now that my hook is in through both the corner loops of my front and the back panel, we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and do a chain up of 1 to secure. And now all we're going to do is a single crochet seam. So let's all start by finding that first available stitch into the front panel, insert your hook into there, finding that next available stitch within the back panel, inserting our hook into there, and then single crocheting it together. Pretty simple. Let's do it again. Start by finding that next available stitch into the front panel, insert, next stitch into the back panel, insert, and then single crochet, and that is it. We're going to continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat everything we just did here on the other side. Alright, so now that our front and back panel is all seamed up, we're now ready to get started on our sleeve, and we're going to need to single crochet around our armhole first. So first things first, make sure that our work is flipped right side out, and then we're going to be inserting our 5.5mm hook into the side row that we have that's nearest to our side seam. So I'm just going to insert my hook into there, insert my yarn onto my hook, pull through, and then do a chain up of 1 to secure. And now from here, we're going to be putting 2 single crochets into every side row. So let's just do the first few. Now this is my first available side row right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert my hook into there with 2 single crochets. So there's my first one. And then into that same side row, I'm going to insert my hook into there with a second single crochet. And that's going to be it for every side row that we have. So let's do another set together. This is my following one. I'm going to insert my hook into that top loop with 1 single crochet, and then into that same top loop with a second single crochet. I'm going to continue to do this until I reach the side of my chest. Once when I do that, I'm going to have just regular single crochets to work into. So I'm going to put 1 single crochet into every stitch until I reach the bottom of our collar. Now we're going to want to make sure that we stop right at this last stitch before we start working into our collar, because we're going to need to insert our stitch marker into there. But I'll meet you guys back once we reach that point. Alright, so I've just single crocheted my way all the way up until I'm one stitch right before my collar. Into that last stitch, we're going to insert our stitch marker, and since we actually don't need these stitch markers anymore, I'm just going to take them out of here and then insert one into that last stitch right before we work into our collar. And now from here, working into our collar, we just have regular single crochets to work into, so we're just going to be putting one single crochet into every stitch until we reach this juncture right over here. Now once we do our last single crochet along the bottom of the collar, I will meet you guys back, just so I can talk you guys through how we're going to close this single crochet row off. Alright, so I've just single crocheted my way across the bottom of my collar. I've just worked my last single crochet into the available stitch, and now the following single crochet is going to be worked down the side of our chest. Now into that following stitch that we're about to do, we're going to need to insert our stitch marker into there as well, because we need our stitch markers to be into the same stitches along both sides. So I'm just going to take out this stitch marker because we don't need it in there anymore, and I'm going to use this for my next stitch. So just find that first available stitch working down our chest, insert your hook into there with one single crochet, and then make sure that we're inserting our stitch marker into that stitch. And now from here, continue to put one single crochet into every stitch, and then one single crochet into every side row, working my way all the way down my underarm. Slip stitch into that chain space so we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and then I will meet you guys back. Alright, so I've just made my way all the way around with my single crochet row, making sure that I inserted my stitch markers into the right spots, and now we're going to start to work on the length of our sleeve. Now I'd like my sleeve to be about a 3/4 length sleeve with a cuff, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 12 inches or 31 centimeters, and that's going to be a chain of 45, but if you guys want your sleeve longer, make a longer chain, or if you want it shorter, make a shorter chain. And now that I have my chain, we're going to do an extended half double crochet row all the way down. So since we already know how to do this, I'm just going to do the first stitch with you guys. Start by blocking off that last chain. We're all going to do a chain 3. That doesn't count as a stitch, that's just our turning chain. And then into that chain that we blocked off, or the 4th chain from our hook, we're going to insert with our first extended half double crochet, and then put one extended half double crochet into every chain, leaving the last one so that we can increase together. So I've made my way all the way down with my extended half double crochet row. I left the last chain, and all we're going to do is an increase into there, so let's just 2 extended half double crochets into that last chain. So there's my first, and there's my second. And once we have that, we just need to connect it into the base, and this is actually going to be the same exact way that we have been connecting it into the base for the front and the back panel. So just as a really quick refresher, we're going to count up 1, count up 2, slip stitch into that second stitch to close off this row. And then from here, we do need to work our way up to the following row, so slip stitch up the following 2 stitches into the base. There's our first, there's our second, flip our work, and all we're going to do from here is start with an increase. Now for this first portion of the sleeve, we're always going to do an increase into the stitches that's nearest to the sleeve, into the stitches that's nearest to the base. So starting with the yarn over, we're going to find the last stitch from our previous row and insert only in through that back loop, starting with an increase. So there's my first, and there's my second back loop extended half double crochet into that first stitch. And then from here, just put one back loop extended half double crochet into every stitch, making my way all the way down. And from here, it's pretty simple. Right after this row, we're going to chain 3, flip our work, and then put one back loop extended half double crochet into every stitch, while maintaining the increase of 2 into the last stitch nearest to the base. And then from there, just connect it into the base the same way that we've been doing this entire time. And we're just going to continue to repeat these 2 rows, making my way all the way up until we reach our first stitch marker. And we want to make sure that that last row is worked into that last stitch marker. And once we reach that point, I'll meet you guys back so we can work across the bottom of our collar. Alright, so I've just made my way all the way up until I reach my stitch marker stitch. Now our last row that we should have been working into, now our last row that we should have done should have been worked into that stitch marker stitch, And then from here, we just have the stitches working across underneath our collar. So all we're going to do is just repeat with back loop extended half double crochets. So this portion is basically going to be the same way that we did the middle portion of the body. No increases and no decreases. So if you're like me and you're at the base, you're going to slip stitch up the following 2 stitches, put 1 back loop extended half double crochet into every stitch, and then just make your way to our other stitch marker. Or if you guys are along the other end, chain 3 and then put 1 into every stitch, connect it into the base the same way that we've been doing, until we make our way all the way over to our next stitch marker, making sure that the last row that we do is worked into the stitch right before our stitch marker stitch. And once we reach this point, I'll meet you guys back so I can show you guys how we're going to do the other side of our sleeve. Alright, so I am back and I just made my way all the way across right underneath my collar, and I have stopped 1 stitch right before my stitch marker along this side. And now from here we're going to do the same thing that we did when we started off the sleeve, but instead of increases right next to the base, we're going to do decreases. So I have actually ended along the outer edge. So what I'm going to do is flip my work and then put 1 back loop extended half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 2. If you guys ended along the base, just slip stitch into the following 2 stitches into the base, flip your work, and then in the next clip, I'll remind you guys how we're going to decrease just once and let you guys do the rest on your own. So I've just made my way all the way down and I left 1, 2 stitches left, and now we're going to do our decrease. So yarn over, insert your hook into that second to last back loop, pull through, insert your hook into that last stitch's back loop, pull through, should have 4 loops on your hook, so yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last 3 loops on our hook. And then since I'm right next to the base, I'm going to be connecting it into the base the same way that we have been doing this entire time. So the next available stitch that I'm going to have is going to be the stitch marker stitch. So that counts as 1, and then that following stitch counts as 2. Into that second stitch for me, I'm going to slip stitch to close off this row. And then from here, I'm going to slip stitch up the following 2 stitches, flip my work, start with a decrease, and then make my way all the way down, putting 1 extended back loop half double crochet into every stitch. And from here, I'm just going to continue to repeat these 2 rows until I don't have any more stitches left to work into. When I don't, I'll meet you guys back so we can seam up our entire sleeve together. Alright, so I am back and I have just finished up the decrease side of my sleeve. I don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to seam it all together. And this is going to be a single crochet seam, so the same seam that we did for the sides. So first things first, we're going to need to make sure that our work is flipped wrong side out. And now that our work is flipped wrong side out, we're ready to do our first single crochet seam. So let's all start by finding that first stitch into the front panel, and then we're going to find that first stitch into the back panel, and then just single crochet it together. And then that's it. Since we already know how to do this, go ahead and continue to do this, making our way all the way down, and then I will meet you guys back. Alright, so I have just finished up seaming my sleeve, and now we're ready to get started on our cuff. So since my seam worked down towards the outside of my cuff, I didn't have to do a chain up of 1 and cut, but if you guys worked inwards, go ahead and do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then insert your 5mm hook into any one of the side rows along the bottom of our sleeve. And all we're going to do from here is put 1 single crochet into every side row. So we're going to find our first available side row, which this is mine right here. I'm going to insert my hook into that top loop with a single crochet. Into that following top loop, I'm going to insert with another single crochet, and that's pretty much it. We're going to continue to do this until we don't have any more side rows left to work into, and then slip stitch into that chain space. So now that our single crochet row is all finished up, the next thing we're going to do is make a chain the length that we want for our cuff to be. Now I'd like for my cuff to be just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 10. Once we have our chain, we're going to block off that last chain, do a chain 1, and then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. So just like for our collar, yarn over, pull through everything, and we're going to continue to put 1 slip stitch into every chain. And now that we put 1 slip stitch into every chain, we're going to need to slip stitch it into the base. So how we're going to connect our slip stitch row is find that next available stitch, insert our hook into there with a slip stitch. And now this first row is nice and connected, and we need to work our way up to the following row, so find that next available stitch, slip stitch up just 1 stitch into the base, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So start by finding the last stitch from our previous row and insert into that back loop, yarn over. Remember, gently tug through everything because if we pull too tightly, then it's going to be too tight to work into for the following rows. And continue to put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and at the end of this row, chain one, flip our work, and then put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch once more, and I'll meet you back at the base just to connect it. And now that we've made our way all the way back down towards the base, we're just going to find that next available stitch, slip stitch it into there to close off this row. And then just to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch, flip our work, and put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. And from here, just continue to repeat these 2 rows, making our way all the way around with no increases and no decreases, and then I'll meet you guys back when we don't have any stitches left to work into the base so that we can seam it all together. Alright, so I've just made my way all the way around with my back loop slip stitch rows, and I don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're just going to seam it together. And this is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam, so the same way that we seam the collar. So we're all going to start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out. And since we already know how to do this, we're just going to do the first one together. So into the front panel, start by finding that first available stitch and insert only in through that front loop. And then into the back panel, find that first available stitch and then insert only in through that back loop. Now once we have all 3 of those loops on our hook, just yarn over, pull through all 3, and then that's it. We're just going to continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and when we don't, repeat everything that we just did here on the other side. Alright, so now that both of our sleeves are all finished up, the last thing that we're going to have to do is our bottom band. So first things first, make sure that our work is flipped right side out, and then we're going to be inserting our 5mm hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the bottom. And from here, we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and all we're going to do now is alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, so let's get this started. Now this is my first available side row right here. All I'm going to do is find that top loop and start with just 1 single crochet into there. Now this is my following side row. I'm going to insert my hook into that top loop with 2 single crochets. So there's 1, and then into that same top loop, there's 2. Now that's going to be our stitch sequence. Let's do another set together. This is our following side row. Insert your hook into there with 1, and then insert your hook into that following side row with 2 single crochets. So there's 1, and then there's 2. And now from here, we're just going to continue to do this, making our way all the way around, and when we don't have any more side rows left to work into, slip stitch into that chain space. And a really quick sizing tip that I have for you guys before I go is this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this piece can stretch for our bottom band portion. So right after your single crochet row is all finished up, just try it on and make sure that it can comfortably fit over your shoulders when you're putting it on and taking it off. If it's a little bit too tight, then you can always go back and either use a looser grip, or also you can feel free to add a couple extra single crochets as well, just to make it a little bit wider for you. But once we have this row all finished up, I'll meet you guys back. Alright, so now that our single crochet row is all finished up, the next thing we're going to do is the length of our bottom band. And it's going to be done pretty much the same way as our cuff, so I'm just going to talk you guys through it. But I don't want mine to be just as long as my cuff. I want mine to be just about 1 inch. So I'm going to start by making a chain of 6. Now that I have my chain, I'm going to block off that last chain, do a chain 1, and then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, a slip stitch. And all we're going to do is put 1 slip stitch into every chain. Once we reach the base, we're going to slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base, and just basically repeat everything for the cuff. So just continue to do our back loop slip stitch rows until we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and then I will meet you guys back so we can seam it together. Alright, so I've made my way all the way around with my back loop slip stitch rows, and now we don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're just going to seam it together. And this is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam, so make sure that our work is flipped right side out, and then we're all going to start by inserting our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Now from here, we're going to yarn over, pull through everything, and since we already know how to do this one, we're just going to do the first one together. So start by finding that first available stitch into the front panel, insert your hook into that front loop, find the next available stitch into the back panel, insert your hook into that back loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 of those loops, and then that's pretty much it. We're going to continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, go ahead and do a chain up of 1 and cut. All right, and now that our bottom band is all finished up, we are all done. Last thing we're gonna have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. All of those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye.